Muchachos amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a podcast about music where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. Real fun time. I'm Petey Rave, and I know the power of love. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my lovely quorum. We've got David.
Stay hydrated, stay moisturized, everybody.
We've got Drew.
Hey.
And we've got Brett.
I enjoy both Huey Lewis and Back to the Future.
Heck yeah. We're here to talk about music, of course, and we're talking about an album. And the provider of the album this week is none other than David. David, what do you got for us this week?
Petey Rave, Record Breakers fans and listeners across the globe. We're going back to 1991. I decided to dip into the soundtrack of my early youth, provided by my mother and my auntie Valerie. So this is one for all of the aunties out there, and maybe even the grandmas, and maybe even the older sisters. So this particular album has a couple of songs that you might have heard on R&B and adult contemporary radio in the early 90s. And this is from the late, great R&B sensation Luther Vandross and his 1991 album, The Power of Love.
Ooh, yeah. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, while we were sitting here prepping for this, I tried to think of, in the back of my head, a Star Fox joke, and I couldn't come up with one. I'm a little disappointed in myself. Because it's Luther Vandross.
What does Star Fox have to do with any of this?
The last boss is Andros.
Yes. That's
Brett's picking up on
only 90 kids will remember.
Yeah.
I had a Sega Genesis, guys. I was a Sega kid. Don't at me.
I thought Star Fox was garbage. But
Star Fox wasn't a great video game, to be fair. It took half an hour. But point being, the reason I was trying to come up with a joke is because it's Luther Vandross. Like, if you don't know who Luther is, like, you got problems. That's on you.
Yeah. Brett, what expectations did you have?
My expectations were smooth.
My expectations were, I'm that guy who has very, very little Luther Vandross in his memories. Let's just say I wasn't hanging out with anybody's aunties or their older sisters, and I lived in an area where in 1991, I don't know that you could find Luther on the radio without trying. I was in the middle of nowhere, and I would have had there was no straight up R&B stations. There might have been some adult contemporary, but I was not adult, nor was I a contemporary. Yeah. So I was just it was all Metallica for me.
Yes, exactly. This does not have the licks of a Metallica record. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever sat down and listened to a Luther Vandross record. But I am aware of Luther Vandross. I remember he was the guy that they made the various jokes of. The joke in the bit was like the sex making music, I love making music anthems, so I was aware of at least that aspect of Luther Vandross. But this is gonna be this would have been the first time I had listened to a Luther Vandross record front to back. David, how would you describe this album musically?
Without containing my laughter about all of this talk about baby making and whatnot, given what we know about Luther, Expectations? I would say, given that this was 1991, so this was definitely going to have a certain vibe and aesthetic in terms of sound. It definitely has that sound, but it still has the well-composed R&B for grown-ups, not in the vein of New Edition or Bobby Brown after he went solo. This was definitely, as they called it, grown folks music, as opposed to like the poppier R&B of the time, pre-Boyz II Men, post-New Edition. Luther also was one of those vocalists of his time that was in the upper tier in terms of R&B and adult contemporary. He was in the higher tier of vocalists. So you are going to hear someone that is in complete command of his voice as an instrument and some really well-composed songs from start to finish.
Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, you make the jokes. My joke always was, your night should always have an ebb and flow. It should start with Barry White, the middle should be Luther, and the end should be Prince. Take that for what you will. Luther Vandross is an amazing voice. Like, bar none, I think one of the best voices in like soul and R&B, period. It's one of those things where think about how much confidence you have to have as a vocalist that this is your record and your bass player that you're bringing in is Marcus fucking Miller. Like you have to know how good your voice is when that's the basis that you're doing opposite on this record. There's a weird thing on this album, to me, that it at once feels right out of time where it's at. Like you said, you're in that like early 90s bubble, that like late 80s, early 90s like R&B soul bubble. But it still feels like there's a timelessness to it. Like it's something that is never gonna, like there's never a point where I'm looking at this and it feels like, oh, this is just a sign of the times, even though it's definitely like every tone out, like every bit of tone out of this record is like that early 90s feel to it.
Dig those snare drums, guys.
Like not only that, but like the tone on Miller's bass. Like if some of these tracks haven't been used in some recent genres that are popular, I'm super surprised. But it's something that is great. And you have his voice where he can belt something insane out, but then be like soft and smooth and soothing, like at the drop of a hat. In him, again, him and Marcus Miller produced this record. Like, if you need any evidence that this is going to be well composed and well thought out, come on. Come on.
Yeah. Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
I mean, it's extremely relatable love ballad set in the first person. It's got, backing vocals, smooth singing women. You get like a whole truckload of synth pad. You've got your reverbed out drums. You've got layered vocals. You've got also novelties that I will talk about later. You got some. It's definitely a turn of the 90s. It takes a lot from the previous decade. It is most definitely of its time in the way that the instrumentation, like if this album was made 5 years later, I don't know that you'd have so much reverb on the drums, or you wouldn't have so much of the weird layering that was kind of interesting, because listening to a good version of this to where you can hear all of that, Plus, some things I'll get to when we break it down into songs.
Yeah, you get so much of that. You get a sound that is very much sounds like the time, late 80s, early 90s, like R&B. The keyboards in particular are fun what they do, and like the digital fun keyboard stuff, and like you said, the bass, and like it all feels of the time, but it all of it feels good, and it feels timeless as well. Like you're pointing out, like it still holds, like it still holds up even with a sign, even sounding of a particular area still holds up so well musically, and it is just so cool to kind of just like groove to, and it's so well made. And as we kind of drill down to the songs, David, what would be some of the key tracks that you would point out?
Some of the songs I feel like, just to scratch my own childhood nostalgia itch, would be the title track, Power of Love, Love Power. This one was all over the place. This is one of those inescapable songs if you are from a certain time period and of a certain socioeconomic background. It was inescapable, this title track. The hook and the verse are pretty strong. I love the bridge, actually, on this song, too. The opening track, She Doesn't Mind. I love how much is going on with this song. It's a very busy song. With the advent of future funk these days, I would love to hear a DJ or a producer in the future funk genre do something with this song. She Doesn't Mind, the opening track on this. Also, I can tell you that one is a bouncy tune. I think nowadays the kids would say that one is a bop. I would also say Don't Want to Be a Fool is another one that I remember in the back of my mind. There's some bass work on there that's maybe a little bit buried in the mix, but it's kind of fun. I think the only song on this album that really felt like kind of a drag for me was near the end, and that was Sometimes It's Only Love. That'd be maybe the one I'd say, you can skip that one.
True. What would be some of the key tracks for you?
Yeah, She Doesn't Mind. I had the same thought, like the vaporwave, like type of genres that are popping up if this bass has not been sampled. The thick, funky tone that it's got. The verse bounces just enough, and then like,
thick,
yes,
and like 8 strings.
That's thick.
And then like the chorus coming in with the chorus of voices you get, the layering is just done to like a ridiculously like high polished degree. I Want the Night to Stay was something that maybe given some of my situations currently hit a little different, we'll say, but it's also like that song that you throw on in the middle of the wedding for the couples on the dance floor. Like, that's just what you do. It's a classic, it's a standby, and it's easy. And then I, who have nothing, to do a duet with Luther Vandross, you have to be pretty confident. But Martha Wash, I think, steals the show here. Her voice is always like powerful. That's kind of what she does. And it was fantastic.
Whether she gets credit for it or not.
I see what you did there, Petey.
All right, everybody, dance now. Brett, what will be some of the key tracks for you?
She Doesn't Mind. There are some S tier rhymes. Yeah, perhaps. But yes, there are some S tier rhymes on that song. It's one of the more memorable hooks on the album for me. And I really enjoyed it. The Rush. It has a whistle solo, but not like the Scorpions song Wind of Change, but like a coach's whistle. There's totally like also a China cymbal, and some weird chimes that sound like they're like when a cartoon skeleton like runs a bone across his rib cage, and like, but if you threw it through an 80s synth kit, and I thought that was amazing. I want like a soundboard of like the isolated percussion on the Rush. And I can tell you that the digital steel drum, orchestral synth. It is the select menu at a Sega arcade racing machine.
Daytona,
yeah,
let's go away.
It's like, you know, it probably makes sense that all of Sega's arcade machines would use like the same digital percussion that was on the market because, you know, it's Sega and it was of the time. So, you know, if you're going to want digital steel drum, or even if you don't, well, guess what? We've got this digital steel drum. But Luther was using it on purpose. And not just a percussion of convenience. So, yeah, that, you know, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. The Rush is fantastic. The keyboard lead in is really nice. On top of what you guys said, like the like how it's just like it just kind of bounced back and forth, which is really fun. Like digital harpsichord kind of fun thing. I also want to shout out I Who Have Nothing, and shout out Martha Wash again, who is fantastic, who is a legend. And she shows up really fantastically here in this duet, and gets proper credit, gets her props like she deserves. Excuse me. And of course, and bring it back to She Doesn't Mind. She Doesn't Mind is a fantastic, like you guys said, it's already been talked about, but She Doesn't Mind, it just sets the pace really well, and it's just a great sound, and it tells you what to expect going forward into the record in such a fantastic way. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn, talk about some conclusions. Drew, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
This is a record that I think you could take anything from Luther Vandross and get something good out of it. It's one of those things where good musicians, no matter their instrument, are going to shine through no matter the genre. So even if necessarily maybe R&B isn't your thing, one, I disagree with you. But two,
yes, you do like it, you butthole. You're wrong. You enjoy it.
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Opinions can be wrong, and not liking like R&B and soul is a wrong opinion to have.
It's wrong.
Wrong. So it's something that, even saying that, if it's not something that you maybe get into a lot, I think it's worth hearing just to hear someone who, like David said at the beginning of this, has complete control of their instrument, and that instrument just happens to be the pipes that this man has, and not the pipes that maybe you're laying down while listening to Luther Vandross.
Talking about boning.
Yeah, banging it.
Sex, every sexual intercourse.
Doing it.
I want to have intercourse.
No matter who you decide,
relations.
No matter who your partner is,
because this is Luther.
Yeah.
Because this is Luther.
Yes, exactly. Brett, how would you conclude on this album as a whole?
I don't know of a time or a place where I'm going to be just let me put this on. But if I do, I know where to find it. This is, you know, it is what it is. And I hate saying that, but it is a turn of the 90s album, what you put on when you screw. And it's way better than what it had to be.
I just love that R&B is immediately synonymous with the sexual relations.
I mean, half
on this
these
podcast.
songs are about like doing someone right. You know, it's a very uplifting album. It is, you know,
it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, just banging it out. It's called The Power of Love too.
Exactly.
It is the power of love.
You can screw with love. But yes, you know, it's well put together. It's probably the biggest issue that I have is that I grew up with these sounds, and if I were to come to this for the first time I've ever heard a digital steel drum, which I kind of wish it was, because you never forget the first time you hear a digital steel drum. But you know, if I was like, you know, a Zoomer and I walked into this album, like there's a lot to listen to. Like there's still a lot to listen to that is not the singing, but like I just, you know, it's not like I'm gonna race a car around a track listening to this. I gotta kind of be in the mood for this. Luckily, I was in the mood for this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't just want to sleep.
Yeah, this is.
It'll put you in a mood. It'll put you in a mood.
Yeah, it'll at the very least make you just feel good, like just feel good and kind of warm inside, even if it's not for sexual time, even if it's just for I'm feeling good about myself time, and I'm just in a good mood and happy right now time. It can make you feel warm and tingly inside, in non-sexual ways as well as sexual ways.
It's the power of love.
Exactly.
Power of love.
Power of love washes through you, with that.
The power of love compels you.
Yes. With that beautiful voice of Luther's. That just he's compelling in his performance, and it just kind of like hooks you in, and it's just beautiful. Last but not least, David, how would you conclude on Luther?
I found this utterly charming, and it took almost 3 decades for me to fully appreciate this, because when you're a kid and you hear the music that your parents listen to, there's always that little bit of you that wants to rebel a little bit, and boy did I ever. But nearly 3 decades later, I've really grown to appreciate Luther as a vocalist and as a songwriter, and just had fun with it. I found the sound utterly charming. I'm an absolute sucker for these kinds of snare drums that you hear on this. I'm an absolute sucker for it. This sound and production, it's no coincidence that I love future funk as much as I do, because this style of music is coded into my DNA. It is in my genetic makeup, and I found myself enjoying it way more than I expected. And Luther was an incredible talent. He really, really was. If you appreciate R&B of any time period, you will enjoy this. The songs are a little longer in length than your typical pop song, but this is not a pop album. This is an R&B album, so just go in knowing that. But it was charming as heck. It really, really was. And honestly, for you vaporwave and future funk producers, if you want recommendations on songs you want to use for samples, at me. Call me DJ M.
Mm-hmm. It's fantastic stuff. Yeah, we bumping Luther out on these streets. Those are our thoughts on Luther Vandross, The Power of Love. Now we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for, our haiku reviews, where we break it all down in poetic form. Get it popping. Yeah, let's get it going. Drew, what is your haiku?
From smooth R&B, put it on with your partner. It is a whole mood.
Brett, what is your haiku?
Yo, synth keys and drums. 90s, but still quite 80s. Not Michael Bolton.
No, not Michael Bolton at all. My haiku. Legendary voice, artfully done R&B, making love music. And of course, last but not least, David, what is your haiku?
R&B was strong, and Luther was a master. Dated sound, strong tunes.
Mm-hmm. Go.
Guys, should I bring some New Edition?
There's some new additions, some ready for the world. Just bring all the different artists that Jamie Foxx name drops in that one song. Just all of them, one after the other.
I have my next album pick already, but maybe I'll switch that out for some New Edition. I don't know.
Well, let's not spoil it. Those are our thoughts on Luther Vandross, Power of Love. Go check it out. Check it out on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Do the thing. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's record. And that'll be provided by Drew. Drew, what do you have for us next week?
Next week's going to be a little bit of a weird one. It was a band that came back to me for some reason. Sometimes this happens. I think of maybe an old band that I haven't listened to in a long time. And this time I thought of a local band to the Northeast Ohio area. Band by the name of the Karkadens with Sovereign of the Seas.
Yarr.
Are they not men? They're not Devo.
No, they're not.
No.
The wrong ones.
Yes.
But they're from down the street.
So they're talking about their average report cards.
Mm-hmm.
Akron.
Yeah.
The Northeast.
Yes. So look forward to that next week, but that'll be next week and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Brett is at HibbityBirbird, HIBBI2YBIBBRD. Drew is at XDruciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelly.net for listening to the shows. Rebelly TV on YouTube. Do all the things. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
Give Petey a good review. He works really hard on these podcasts. Help a college student out with his dream. Why don't you?
Hammer that bell.
Yeah, do all those things.
Like, share, subscribe.
Like Felicia Day used to say, she'll like a scribe. Until next time. Hasta la flores.
They're going from 4 shitters to 2 glue.
Shalika scribe is not a thing.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.